Human finds the alien girl freezing outside and helps her stand, and the alien girl says the cold knelt. Hello everyone, before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let's get back to our main character. John Carter, an ordinary man living in a quiet suburban neighborhood, was just heading home from work. The evening air was crisp, and a light snow had begun to fall, coating the ground with a soft, white blanket. John zipped up his jacket, tugging his scarf tighter around his neck as he made his way down the street. It had been a long day, but there was something peaceful about walking alone in the cold. The streets were almost empty, the only sounds being the crunch of his boots on the snow and the faint hum of the distant city. As John walked, he noticed something strange ahead. A figure, small and slumped against a street lamp, barely visible in the falling snow. At first, he thought it was a lost child, but as he got closer, he realized it was a woman. She was huddled against the cold, her knees drawn to her chest, her arms wrapped tightly around herself. Her skin shimmered faintly in the dim light, like something otherworldly. For a moment, John hesitated. He had never seen anyone like her before. Her features were delicate, with sharp, almost alien eyes that seemed to glow faintly. Her hair, silver and long, fell in soft waves around her face. She was not from here, not from Earth. His first instinct was to walk away, to ignore the strange sight and continue home. But then, he noticed how she trembled. The cold was clearly too much for her. She was freezing, and there was no one else around. Without thinking, John approached her. "Hey, are you okay?" he asked, crouching down beside her. She looked up at him, her eyes wide with confusion, but she didn't speak. He reached out a hand, gently touching her shoulder. "Come on, let's get you inside," he said softly. The woman nodded, still shivering uncontrollably. With some effort, John helped her to her feet. She seemed weak, her body unable to support itself properly, but she clung to him as they made their way to his house. John could feel her cold, icy skin against his own, and it sent a chill up his spine. He wondered who she was, where she came from, and how she had ended up in this desolate street. As they reached the warmth of his home, he guided her inside, the heat from the furnace almost overwhelming after the cold night air. The woman collapsed onto the couch, still trembling. John hurried to fetch a blanket, wrapping it around her. He turned to her, trying to ask her name, but she only stared back at him, silent. Then, in a voice that seemed almost foreign, she spoke. "The cold, Knelt," she whispered, her voice shaking. John stared at her, confused. "What do you mean?" he asked, not sure what she was trying to say. She didn't answer. Instead, she closed her eyes, resting her head back against the couch, and fell into an uneasy sleep. John stood there for a moment, staring at the strange woman, his mind racing with questions. Who was she? What was she saying? And why did she look like she didn't belong here? John sat across from the woman, who was now resting on the couch. The warmth of the house seemed to have a soothing effect, but she was still shivering slightly. Her eyes were closed, but her chest rose and fell with each breath, slow and steady. He could not shake the strange feeling that something was off about her. There was something about her presence, something unfamiliar. She was so different from anyone he had ever met, yet there was a sense of calm in her that made him want to protect her. John glanced over at the clock. It was nearly midnight. He wondered how long she had been out there in the cold. He couldn't imagine how someone could survive in the frigid temperature without help. He walked into the kitchen to grab a glass of water and sat back down beside her. His mind was racing. Who was she? Where had she come from? The thought of an alien from another world seemed almost too unbelievable, but Deep down, John felt something about her that confirmed it. She wasn't from Earth. He turned to her again. "Are you okay?" he asked, his voice gentle. She opened her eyes slowly, meeting his gaze. There was something in her eyes that he couldn't quite understand, but it was almost as if she were seeing him, not just physically, but deeply, like she was reading his very thoughts. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The silence was thick, but comforting. Then, she broke it. "You saved me," she said softly, her voice still trembling. The cold knelt. John frowned. He still couldn't understand what she meant by that. "What do you mean? What does that even mean?" "The cold knelt," he asked, his voice filled with concern. She seemed to struggle with the words, as if trying to put her thoughts together. "The cold was too much. It made me weak," she explained, her voice barely above a whisper. John nodded, though he still didn't fully understand. I can't imagine what that must have felt like." "You're safe now, okay? Just rest," he said, hoping to offer her some comfort. She nodded slowly, but then she looked at him with a strange intensity. "I don't belong here," she said quietly, as if admitting something painful. "Where do you belong?" John asked gently. She hesitated, her gaze drifting away as if searching for an answer in the room's corners. "Not here," she said again, her voice distant. "I am far from here, from home." John's heart skipped a beat. "You're from another world, aren't you?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. She didn't answer immediately, but the way she looked at him confirmed it. There was no denying it now. This woman, this alien, was not from Earth. John felt a surge of curiosity mixed with awe. He didn't know what to do with this new information. He had always been a man of science, a logical thinker, but the reality of what he was facing now was beyond anything he could have prepared for. "Why are you here?" he asked softly, though he already knew the answer wasn't something she could easily explain. She looked down, as if lost in her thoughts. "I don't know. I was lost. My ship crashed." Her voice faltered slightly, but she quickly regained her composure. "I tried to find my way, but the cold stopped me. I couldn't stand against it." John's mind raced. A crashed spaceship. It sounded like something out of a science fiction novel, but this wasn't fiction. This was real. "You were stranded here?" he asked. "Yes," she replied, her voice steady now. "I didn't mean to be. I never meant to come here. But the cold, it is too much. I could not survive it alone." John felt a deep sense of empathy for her. She wasn't just an alien, she was a being in need of help, just like any other person would be in her situation. "You're not alone now," he said softly. "I'll help you. We'll figure this out together." She looked at him then, and for the first time since he found her outside, there was a soft flicker of hope in her eyes. "Thank you," she whispered. John gave her a small smile, unsure of what the future held but determined to help her, no matter what. He knew this was only the beginning of something far bigger than either of them could comprehend. John sat down next to the woman, now wrapped in a thick blanket, still trying to comprehend the situation. His mind raced with questions, but he wasn't sure where to start. The woman, Lyra, had come from somewhere far beyond his understanding, and she was lost, stranded on Earth. It was too much to process all at once. "How did you get here?" John asked gently, trying to break the silence that had fallen between them. Lyra looked at him, her eyes still distant. "I told you, my ship crashed," she replied softly, her voice faint, almost as if recalling a painful memory. "It was supposed to be a routine journey, but something went wrong. A malfunction, a sudden shift in space-time. My ship was torn apart." John leaned forward, his curiosity piqued. "What kind of ship?" he asked. Lyra's gaze dropped to the floor, as though the words were difficult to say. It was not made for Earth, she said quietly. It was a transport vessel, designed for long-distance travel between star systems. It was my only way home. John could hear the sadness in her voice, the weight of the loss. Where is home? He asked, his tone soft. Lyra seemed to hesitate before answering. I come from a planet. Far away. It is not like this one. It's not like Earth. She paused, as if searching for the right words. It's a place of warmth, where the sky is always clear, and the air is light. It is a place where we live in harmony, in balance with nature. John felt a pang of sympathy for her. He couldn't imagine what it must feel like to be so far from everything she knew. It must be beautiful, he said, his voice low. It was, she replied. But now, I do not know what remains. The crash, it was catastrophic. The energy from the crash, it disrupted the balance of everything. John listened carefully, trying to piece together what she was telling him. And now you're here, he said slowly, alone, stranded. Lyra nodded, her eyes still clouded with sorrow. Yes, she whispered. I am alone. I have no way to return. John's heart went out to her. He couldn't imagine the pain of being separated from everything you've ever known, especially when you had no way of going back. He looked at her, his mind working. What do you need? Is there anything I can do to help? Lyra met his gaze, and for a moment, her eyes softened. You have already helped me, she said quietly. Without you, I would not have survived the cold. I do not know what I would have done. John smiled gently, trying to reassure her. You don't need to thank me. I couldn't just leave you out there. But Lyra's expression grew serious. You do not understand, she said, her voice urgent now. The cold, it is not just a temperature. It is something far worse. It is a force, an enemy that I cannot fight. It is part of why I was stranded. The cold, it knelt before me, weakened me. It controls everything here. John frowned, not understanding what she meant by the cold knelt, but he could hear the fear in her voice. What do you mean? He asked. Lyra looked at him, her face grave. The cold is a force that no one can escape. It is not just the weather. It is something deeper. It is something that follows me, hunts me. It has followed me here. It is why I cannot survive without help. John felt a chill run down his spine. The way she spoke, with such conviction, made him feel that she wasn't just talking about the weather. There was something more, something far more dangerous at play. We need to figure this out, he said, his voice steady despite the growing unease in his chest. We'll get you help, I promise. You're not alone anymore. Lyra nodded, but there was still a shadow in her eyes, a hint of fear that John couldn't ignore. He realized that this wasn't just about helping a stranger. This was about something far greater, something he couldn't yet understand. But he would help her, no matter what it took. Thank you, she whispered again, her voice full of gratitude, but also fear. I will not forget your kindness. John nodded, his resolve firm. Let's figure this out together. He didn't know what the future held, but one thing was clear, his life had just changed forever. John sat silently, watching Lyra as she seemed lost in thought, her eyes staring out the window at the falling snow. He couldn't shake the feeling that they were both caught in something much bigger than either of them could understand. The cold, she had said. It wasn't just the temperature. It was something else, something far more sinister, a force that had followed her here. John didn't know what to believe, but he knew one thing for certain, he had to help her. What are you going to do now? He asked softly, breaking the silence. Lyra turned to look at him, her eyes filled with uncertainty. I do not know, she replied quietly. I have no way of leaving. I cannot return to my planet. I am stranded. John felt a pang of sympathy for her. The idea of being so far from home, without a way to get back, was something he couldn't even begin to imagine. "You're not stranded here with no help," he said firmly. "We'll figure this out. We'll find a way to get you back home." Lyra gave him a faint smile, but it didn't reach her eyes. "Thank you," she whispered, but the doubt in her voice was clear. John stood up and began pacing, his mind whirring with thoughts. He had no idea how to help her, but he wasn't going to give up. He would figure something out. "I don't know what to do, Lyra," he said, his voice filled with frustration. "But I'll keep searching. There has to be something, some way to help you." Lyra's gaze softened. "You have already done so much for me," she said quietly. "I did not expect this kindness. I do not belong here. I am not supposed to be on this world." John stopped pacing and turned to face her. "You belong here just as much as anyone else," he said, his voice firm with conviction. "This is your home now, even if it's not what you expected. I'll make sure you're safe. I won't let anything happen to you." The sincerity in his words seemed to ease some of the tension in Lyra's expression. She nodded slowly, but the fear still lingered in her eyes. John could see that she was trying to be strong, but the weight of what she was going through was clearly taking its toll. He didn't know what the future held, but he knew that he would stand by her no matter what. As the night wore on, John and Lyra continued to talk, their conversations slow and thoughtful. John asked more about her world, about the places she had seen and the people she had known. Lyra, in turn, asked him about Earth, about his life and his world. Though their worlds were completely different, they began to find common ground in their shared humanity. As the evening came to a close, John offered her a place to sleep. "You can stay here as long as you need," he said. "I'll do everything I can to help." Lyra nodded, her expression a little more relaxed now. "Thank you, John. You have given me hope," she said softly. "In a world that feels so alien, you are the first person to show me kindness." John smiled, but the weight of the situation still hung heavily in the air. He didn't know what the future would bring, but he knew that, for now, Lyra was safe. And he would do whatever it took to keep it that way. The days that followed were a blur for John. He had never imagined his life would take such an unexpected turn. The quiet suburban life he had known for so long was now filled with questions and uncertainties. Lyra had become a part of his daily routine. They spent hours talking, trying to understand each other's worlds. John learned more about her planet, the place she called home, a world of vast, golden fields and crystal-clear skies. Her people had lived in harmony with nature, their technology advanced yet balanced with the environment. It was hard for John to imagine such a place. Earth, by contrast, was still struggling with its own issues, and yet, here she was, stranded in a strange world. At the same time, Lyra asked about Earth, about the things she had never seen before, cities, cars, technology. She was fascinated by everything, even the simplest of things, like the way the sun set over the horizon or how people interacted with each other. One evening, as they sat in the living room, Lyra looked at John, her face serious. "I do not belong here," she said quietly. John paused, not sure how to respond. "Lyra, I understand you're far from home, but that doesn't mean you're not meant to be here." She shook her head slightly. "No, John. There is something wrong. The cold, it is not just the temperature, it is the force that follows me. It does not stop." John felt a chill run down his spine. He had heard her talk about the cold before, but he had never truly understood what she meant. "What do you mean? What is the cold, really?" he asked, his voice filled with concern. "It is a presence," Lyra explained, her voice low. "It is not just weather, it is an entity, something that has followed me from my world. Wherever I go, it follows. It grows stronger with each passing day." John was quiet for a moment, trying to process her words. So this cold, this force, it's not just a natural thing. It's hunting you. Lyra nodded solemnly. Yes. It has been with me since the crash. And now, it has found me here, on Earth. John's heart pounded in his chest. He had been helping her for days, but now he realized the danger was far more complicated than he had thought. What does it want? He asked, almost afraid to hear the answer. Lyra's eyes darkened. It is not about what it wants. It wants to destroy, to consume. It feeds on energy, on life. It will stop at nothing to find me, and once it does, there will be no escaping it. John could feel the weight of her words, the fear that laced them. He had always thought of the cold as just a harsh winter chill, something to bundle up against. But now, in the context of her story, it felt like something far more menacing. He took a deep breath, trying to steady himself. We need to figure out a way to stop it. We can't let it destroy you. Lyra's expression softened slightly. I do not know if it can be stopped, she said quietly. But I will not stop trying. I cannot let it take me. Not again. John nodded, feeling a sense of resolve settle in. He had always faced challenges in his life, but this was something entirely different. He had no idea how to fight something like this, but he wasn't going to give up on her. We'll figure something out. Together, he said, his voice firm. Lyra looked at him with a quiet gratitude. Thank you, John. You are more than I could have ever hoped for in this strange place. John gave her a reassuring smile. No one should be alone, especially not here. But deep down, he knew that whatever was coming, they would face it together, no matter how impossible it seemed. Days passed, and with each one, the pressure seemed to mount. John couldn't shake the feeling that something was coming, something that would test everything he thought he knew about the world and about himself. Lyra's warnings about the cold, about the force that followed her, haunted him. The warmth of his home, which had once been a place of comfort, now felt like an island surrounded by an encroaching storm. Lyra had grown quieter over the past few days, retreating into herself more and more. She had stopped explaining the cold's nature in detail, but John could see the fear in her eyes, a fear that seemed to grow each time the temperature dropped. It was hard to ignore the subtle changes around them. The air felt heavier, colder. Even though the weather outside was typical for winter, John couldn't help but feel that it wasn't just the natural chill that made the house feel so oppressive. One evening, as he sat in the living room, looking through his phone for any clues or information that could help, Lyra entered the room. Her pale face looked even more drawn, and her silver hair, once so lively, seemed to hang limply around her shoulders. John, she said, her voice soft, almost fragile. I can feel it again. It is coming. He looked up at her, his heart sinking. The look in her eyes confirmed what he had been fearing. The cold was growing stronger, and it wasn't just a physical presence anymore, it was something else, something far more dangerous. What should we do? John asked, trying to keep his voice calm despite the panic rising inside him. We need to leave, Lyra replied, her voice trembling. It is too late for this place. The cold, it has already found us here. John's chest tightened. He had no idea where they could go, what they could do, but Lyra was right. The sense of dread in the air had become almost unbearable. He didn't know how to fight this, but he couldn't just stand there and do nothing. Where do we go? He asked urgently. Lyra closed her eyes for a moment, as if searching for an answer, then opened them again, her gaze steady. There is a place, she said quietly. A place where I can hide. It is far from here, beyond your world. But I cannot go alone. I need your help. John's heart skipped a beat. You mean, you want me to go with you? To leave Earth? Lyra nodded. Yes. The cold will not follow us there. But we must act quickly, before it grows too strong. John thought for a moment, trying to process everything. Could he really leave everything behind and follow her? Could he leave Earth? The idea seemed almost impossible, but looking into Lyra's eyes, he knew there was no other choice. He couldn't let her face this alone. "I'll go with you," he said, his voice firm, though the uncertainty was still there. "But how do we get there? How do we even leave Earth?" Lyra smiled faintly, the first smile John had seen in days. "I will show you," she said. "But first, we must prepare. The cold will not give us much time." They both stood up, and John felt a surge of adrenaline rush through him. There was no turning back now. Whatever this cold was, whatever force had followed Lyra, it was coming for them. And together, they would have to fight it. The future was uncertain, but John knew that if he had to face the unknown, he would do it by Lyra's side. They had no choice but to face it together. The next morning, John woke up with a sense of urgency he hadn't felt before. Lyra had spent the night in the guest room, and though she was quiet, he could see the fear in her eyes. The weight of their conversation the previous night still lingered. They had no time to waste. John had never thought much about leaving Earth, about venturing beyond the life he had known. But now, with Lyra beside him, he understood that he didn't have a choice. The cold was coming, and it would stop at nothing to find her. John had to help her escape. He got up early, packing only what he thought was essential. He didn't know what they would face, but whatever it was, he would be ready. As he zipped up his bag, he heard a soft knock on the door. Lyra stood in the doorway, her face serious, but her eyes focused. "Are you ready?" she asked quietly. John nodded, though his heart was racing. "Yeah. Let's go." The morning was cold, but it wasn't the cold that had made them fearful. No, this was the kind of cold that signaled the change, the kind that sent a shiver through your bones. It felt different now. The air seemed heavy, pressing down on them both as they stepped outside. John glanced at Lyra, who had pulled her hood over her head, shielding her from the chill. She looked more distant than usual, her mind focused on whatever awaited them. As they walked down the street, John couldn't help but feel the weight of their situation. He wasn't sure where they were going or how they were going to leave Earth, but Lyra had said she would show him. He trusted her. "How far is it?" he asked after a while. Lyra looked at him, her expression hard to read. "It's not far," she said, her voice calm but distant. "But the journey won't be easy. We must be quick." John's mind raced with questions. What exactly are we going to do when we get there? How will we leave Earth? Lyra didn't answer immediately, as if she were choosing her words carefully. Finally, she spoke. "There is a place, hidden from this world. It is a gateway, a way to travel between worlds. I have been there before." John's heart skipped a beat. "A gateway? To another world?" Lyra nodded. "Yes, but it is not simple. It is a place of energy, where the fabric of this reality is thinner. It is a path, a way to escape the cold." John's mind was spinning. It all sounded so impossible. A gateway? Between worlds? Yet, as he looked at Lyra, he saw the determination in her eyes. She was certain. And if she was certain, then he had to be too. They walked in silence for a few more minutes, the only sounds the crunch of their boots on the snow-covered ground and the wind whispering through the trees. Eventually, they came to a small clearing, where the trees opened up to reveal a large rock formation. Lyra stopped in front of it and turned to John. "We are here," she said, her voice steady. John looked around, trying to understand. There was nothing special about the clearing, nothing that indicated it was anything other than a place in the woods. But Lyra stepped forward, her hands moving in intricate patterns as she spoke in a language John couldn't understand. The air around them seemed to shimmer. John took a cautious step back, unsure of what was happening. The temperature dropped sharply, and he felt an icy breeze rush past him. Lyra's eyes closed as she continued to chant, and suddenly, the ground beneath them began to hum with energy. John's heart raced. He could feel the change in the air, the energy shifting, vibrating with a force he had never felt before. Then, before his eyes, the air in front of them seemed to tear open, revealing a glowing, swirling vortex. John gasped, unable to believe what he was seeing. "This is it," Lyra said, her voice steady despite the chaos around them. "This is our way out." Without hesitation, she stepped forward, her body disappearing into the swirling vortex. John hesitated for just a moment, but then, with a deep breath, he followed her into the unknown. John felt a rush of cold air as he stepped into the vortex. It was as if his very being was being torn apart and reassembled in a new space. The ground beneath him no longer felt solid. Instead, he was floating, weightless, surrounded by swirling colors and lights. His eyes darted around, trying to make sense of what he was seeing, but it was like trying to focus on 1,000 things at once. The vortex felt alive, vibrating with energy, and as he moved deeper into it, he felt a strange sensation coursing through his body. It was like electricity, both exhilarating and terrifying at the same time. Just as he thought he couldn't handle the sensation anymore, the world around him shifted. The colors began to fade, the swirling lights dimmed, and suddenly, he felt his feet touch solid ground again. He blinked, disoriented, and took a deep breath. The air here was different, crisp, clean, and smelled faintly of something floral. He looked around, taking in the strange, alien landscape. The sky above him was a soft purple, and the ground was covered with bioluminescent plants that glowed in hues of blue and green. The trees were unlike anything he had ever seen, tall with long, flowing vines that seemed to sway even though there was no wind. It was beautiful, otherworldly, and somehow peaceful. He turned to find Lyra standing beside him, her expression calm, but there was a flicker of exhaustion in her eyes. "We're here," she said quietly, her voice sounding almost reverent as she took in the alien world around them. "This is the place I told you about. My sanctuary." John nodded, still taking it all in. "It's incredible," he whispered, his voice filled with awe. "It's nothing like Earth." Lyra gave him a small smile. "It's not. This is a place of healing, a place where the cold cannot follow me. I can rest here, I can be safe." John looked at her, his heart filled with a mixture of relief and concern. "But what about the cold?" he asked, his voice tinged with uncertainty. "You said it wouldn't follow you here. Is it really gone?" Lyra closed her eyes, her expression growing more somber. "For now," she said quietly. "It won't come here, not for a while. But the cold is relentless. It will find me again, and when it does, I will have to face it." John didn't know what to say. The uncertainty in her voice made his stomach tighten. "What will we do then?" he asked. Lyra sighed and looked around at the strange landscape. "For now, we rest. We heal. We have time, but not much. The cold has many ways of finding those it seeks. But here, we have a chance. I can teach you how to protect yourself, how to survive in this world." John nodded, feeling the weight of the responsibility settling on his shoulders. He had no idea how he would help Lyra, but he knew one thing for sure, he wasn't going to leave her. Not now, not ever. He stepped closer to her. "We'll figure it out," he said, his voice steady. "I'll be with you, whatever comes." Lyra met his gaze, her eyes filled with quiet gratitude. "Thank you," she whispered. "I'm not used to being protected. But I think I might need you." John smiled softly. "Then I'm here." The two of them stood there for a moment, surrounded by the strange beauty of the alien world, knowing that whatever came next, they would face it together. The cold had been left behind for now, but its shadow still loomed in the distance. And John knew that their journey was far from over. The days that followed felt like a strange blur for John. He and Lyra settled into their new surroundings, the alien world that had become their sanctuary. The bioluminescent plants glowed softly, casting an ethereal light across their path as they explored. It was a beautiful place, serene in a way that made everything feel safe, but there was always that underlying tension. The cold, the force that had hunted Lyra, was never far from their thoughts. Lyra seemed to relax here, but John could tell that the peace was temporary. She had said it herself, when the cold found her again, they would have to face it. Each day, they spent time learning from each other. Lyra taught John about her world, its ways, its energy, and how to protect himself from the forces that ruled it. John, in turn, shared stories of Earth, the people, the places, the technology that defined his world. It was an exchange of knowledge, but also of comfort. In this strange new land, their connection deepened. They had become more than just strangers thrown together by fate, they had become partners, bound by a shared struggle. One evening, as they sat together watching the sky shift from purple to deep blue, John broke the silence. "How long do we have?" he asked quietly, his gaze never leaving the horizon. Lyra was silent for a moment. Before responding, "It is hard to say. The cold, it has a way of slipping through time, finding weaknesses. I cannot predict when it will come, but when it does, it will be swift." John felt a chill run through him, despite the warmth of their surroundings. "How do we fight it?" he asked. Lyra looked at him, her expression serious. "The cold cannot be fought in the traditional way. It is not a thing you can touch or see. It is a force, a presence that feeds on fear and weakness. To survive it, you must become something stronger. You must be able to resist it from within." John nodded slowly, trying to understand. "And how do I do that?" Lyra smiled faintly, her eyes softening. "You have already begun. You are here with me, and that is the first step. Your resolve, your willingness to face the unknown, it strengthens you. Together, we will learn to resist the cold. Together, we can face whatever comes." John looked at her, the weight of her words sinking in. He wasn't sure what it meant to resist something like the cold, but he knew one thing for sure, he wasn't going to let Lyra face it alone. "I'm with you," he said, his voice firm. Lyra nodded, and for the first time in days, a true smile touched her lips. "Thank you, John. You are braver than you think." As the night stretched on, they sat in companionable silence, the stars above them shining brightly. The cold may have been waiting in the distance, but for now, they had each other. And that was enough. Lyra had come from a world of harmony, a place where everything was in balance. John had come from a world of chaos, where survival was a constant struggle. But together, they had found something stronger than either of their worlds, a bond forged in the fires of uncertainty, a promise to face whatever came next side by side.